Okay, today's lesson is 12-9, inverse trig functions. So, it's a lot of fun if you like the game Jeopardy, because basically you're going to be given the answer and you got to come up with the question, which is how we play Jeopardy. So, keep in mind, before and what we have done up until this point, you have a function and you input an angle. Okay, and I'll give you an example. So an example of an input would be, what is the cosine of 30 degrees? 30 degrees is my angle. What is the output? Well, the answer, what's the cosine of 30 degrees? It is 1/2. So the output is some number. Well, now, okay, we're going to, if we're doing an inverse, okay, what I actually like to ask in class is, how do you find the inverse? And I'm sure you all said you just switch the input and the output. You switch the x and the y. So now my input is going to be a number, and my output is going to be an angle. Okay? Now, one of the things that's a little bit different here, because if I asked you where is the cosine 1/2, okay, if you were to look at your unit circle, okay, cosine is 1/2 at 60 degrees, but it is also 1/2 at 300 degrees. So one of the things to remember, we're going to be flipping back and forth with that, is in our inverse trig functions, you will always only have one answer. So we have to all agree what that one answer is going to be. Is it going to always be 60 or is it going to be 300? So they have a way to determine that. And what it does is it restricts our sine, cosine, and tangent function to between certain values. Okay. Before I go on to that, I want to point out to you, let's do this. I want this color. These are the symbols, and you need to be familiar with the symbols of what it looks like. So this whole column here, when they're asking you, so it can either say sine to the -1, and that is read inverse sine, or it can say arc sine, inverse cosine or arc cosine, inverse tangent or arc tangent. And when you see that, that means any of these symbols means they're asking you for the angle that gives you that value, that and we'll do lots of them, so you'll see. Okay, if you remember from our sine and cosine function, okay, well, let's go on with that. Okay, it is restricted. Okay, and you got to remember on your unit circle where the numbers, which angles that we want, and it's really in regards to the positive and the negative ones. All of the angles are positive in this first quadrant. This is my unit circle. They're all positive in the first quadrant. Where's the cosine? Negative. Okay, the cosine is negative in one of these two quadrants. But to limit it, and again, this helps a little bit better when we've done the graphing, and we haven't done the graphing yet. Okay, so the cosine is negative in the second quadrant, but we basically want to talk about two quadrants that are touching each other. So whenever you do the inverse cosine, every angle that you're going to give as an answer will have to be in either the first or the second quadrant. Okay, now in regards to the sine is negative in these two quadrants. And again, we want the quadrant that's going to touch the first quadrant. So that's why we're going to use this one. Okay. So that being said, sine and cosine are both in these two quadrants. And this is just a little picture to help you remember where the answers to your problems are going to be. So let's do some problems that'll make more sense. And if you have any trouble with this, like I said, come see me, come to the live Q&A, email me. I'll be happy to meet you. Okay? All right. Find each value, write the angle measures in degrees and in radians. Okay? So cosine, inverse cosine of -1/2. So what you're doing is you're going to your circle. It said inverse cosine. That's only in these two quadrants. It's negative, so I'm in this quadrant. And it said, where's the cosine -1/2? Well, there's -1/2 because we know cosine is the first coordinate. So my answer in degrees is 120, and my answer in radians is 2 pi over 3. So we're going to go write that. We have 120 degrees and 2 pi over 3 radians. Okay? Inverse cosine of 0. Where is the cosine 0? So again, going to my unit circle, cosine is the first coordinate. So where's the cosine 0? It is up here. It is also down here. But remember on our little diagram, okay, over here, my cosine answer has to be between these two quadrants. So I'm not going to look down there for the answer. So what's the inverse cosine of 0? It is 90 degrees, which is the same thing as pi over 2. Okay? Arc sine, negative square root of 2 over 2. Again, this is saying, what is the angle when the sine equals negative square root of 2 over 2? So, from my picture, sine, I'm looking in these two quadrants. Actually, sorry, can't see that. Sine, inverse sine, I'm looking in these two quadrants. If it's negative, I'm looking down here. So I'm only looking for the angle in that quadrant that has a value of negative square root of 2 over 2, which you can tell is right here. Now, this is the tricky part of the arc sine, okay? And arc sine and arc tangent. It comes back up here. You always have to give the range between positive pi over 2 and negative pi over 2, or between negative 90 and positive 90, however you wish to see it. So even though, yes, on my unit circle, it said 315 degrees, the answer that you give is going to be negative 45 degrees or negative pi over 4. So let me tell you, and as I put some more examples down here because I'm going to tell you an easier way to do it. If it is sine or tangent and it's negative, okay, so that means you're looking for an angle in the fourth quadrant, okay? The easiest thing to do is go put the negative in your answer and then treat it like it's positive. So where is the sine 1/2? The sine is 1/2 at 30 degrees. It's a negative to begin with, so it's going to be negative 30. That's the same thing as pi over 6, so it would be negative pi over 6. Oops, I don't mean to do that. All right, inverse tangent of negative square root of 3. Again, if it's sine or cosine or tangent and it's negative, inverse sine, inverse tangent of a negative value, put the negative in your answer. Where is the tangent equal to the square root of 3? Okay, that is when it's sine over cosine. So the tangent is the square root of 3 right here. So my answer is going to be negative 60 or negative pi over 3. Okay, so I have made a Quizlet for you to help practice this, and I would really encourage you to do that before you take your lesson check. I will make sure the link is on the calendar for the day that this lesson is taught. Okay? Now, sometimes we do what is a composition. Okay? If you remember, composition of angles is when we composition of functions is when we take the results of one function and apply it to another one. So in this particular case, you can see that I have two functions going on right here. Okay, the key to remember when you're doing these problems is that you always want to start on the inside parentheses. So if I start on the inside, let's look at find each value, round to the nearest hundredth if it's not on the unit circle. Okay, 3/8 is not on the unit circle. So inverse tangent of 3/8, you're going to punch that in your calculator. Rounding to the nearest hundredth, this value right here, this value, inverse tangent of 3/8 is 20.56. So now all I did was replace that expression with 20.56. If you need any help with your calculator, please let me know, okay? So now on my calculator, I'm just going to go punch in sine of 20.56, and that'll give me an answer of 0.35, okay? On the unit circle, that is a value on the unit circle, so you need to recognize that. So where is the cosine negative square root of 2 over 2? Well, that is a pi over 4 angle, but it's negative, so I need to get the one that's in the second quadrant. So I'm going to have the cosine of 3 pi over 4, and the cosine of 3 pi over 4 is negative square root of 2 over 2. Now, sometimes there's a way of doing that a little simpler, but I think, for instance, on this video, I'm going to leave it like this. You will be safe if you will always do it step by step and start from the inside and go out because you have multiple parentheses. Okay, look at these next problems. We are finding an angle measure, and this one's just straight up using it on your calculator. Okay, when you see a problem like this, I often like to rewrite it solving for theta, because then it helps you know that you're looking for that button on your calculator. You have a button on your calculator that says sine to the -1. Okay, and when you punch that in, you're going to find out what your answer is. But I will tell you this, standardized test, y'all, if the sign is negative, we just talked about that. That means that there's no way that C or D could be your answer. So that leaves either A or B, and of course, the answer is A. Okay, look at the next one. If tangent equals 1.8, find theta. Tangent of theta equals 1.8, find theta. So again, punch that in your calculator and you will get an answer of 60.9 degrees. Straight up just using your calculator. So again, email me if you have any trouble. All right, a word problem. A ski trail is shown at right. Write an inverse trig function that can be used to find theta. If the triangle, write an inverse trig function that can be used to find theta, the angle the trail makes with the ground in the valley, then find the angle. Round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so what we have done before back in 12.1, you remember that if theta is here in my triangle, this side is opposite and this side is adjacent, which means I'm going to be using the tangent function. So what we wrote in 12.1 was the tangent of theta equals 5 over 12. They asked us to write an inverse trig function, so if I solve that for theta, then I'm going to have theta equals inverse tangent of 5 over 12. And when I put that in my calculator, I get theta equals 22.6 degrees. So that's all it is. I would like to go down here and do some problems at the bottom of your homework. They have a tendency to cause problems for people. So look at this. You got to kind of pay attention to the directions. It's a little bit different from just straight up problems like we just had. Solve the equation for theta round to 3 significant digits. Oops, I don't think I did that part. So I'm going to ignore this part on the video. Okay? And I'm really big about following directions, but clearly I didn't do it this time. Okay, so I'm going to do number 12 for you. It says tangent of theta equals 5.3, and theta is between 180 and 270 degrees. So I'm going to work down here, and I'm going to solve that for theta. So I'm going to have theta equals inverse tangent of 5.3. That is in the third quadrant because 180 to 270 is quadrant 3. So when I put that in my calculator, it gives me 79.3 degrees. So what you got to pay attention to is that they wanted the answer in the third quadrant, but clearly you all know that's not the third quadrant. That is actually the first quadrant. So if it's not in the quadrant that you need with the tangent function, all you have to do is add 180 to it and you will get the correct answer because 259.3 is in the third quadrant. But I also drew a picture for you so that you could see what's happening is the calculator gave you this angle. It gives you 79.3 because that has a tangent value of 5.3. But since they told us it had to be in quadrant 3, then I know I have to be down here and I have to have that same reference angle. So that's the angle. This little pink arc is showing you the whole angle. The green one is showing you that those two are vertical angles, and that's why they have the same, they're congruent and are going to have the same measure. And that's going to be the other place where the tangent is positive. So tangent, if when you use your calculator, it is not in the quadrant that it's asked, then you're going to add 180 to it and you will have the right answer. Cosine is a little bit harder. So this is where the point of reference angles comes in. Okay, so this particular example, cosine of theta equals negative 0.2. So if I solve that for theta, I have theta equals the inverse cosine of negative 0.2. And my calculator says theta equals 101.5. Well, 101.5 is not between those two values. So I drew another picture. Let's see if you can understand. Okay, 101.5 is this pink angle that I've drawn. Okay, but I need it in the third quadrant. So I need what this blue angle is. And these two angles have the same reference angle. And that is that angle made with the x-axis. So how did I figure out that it was 78.5? I know y'all told me. I just have to subtract it from 180. Okay, I think I put 180 right here in the picture for you. So if I put 180 right there because that's pi, then 78.5 before 180 is my 101.5. But 78.5 after 180 is going to give me the answer. Now, with the cosine, if you come up and that angle is not, if this angle is not in the quadrant that you come, it is easiest. All you have to do is add 360 to it, or excuse me, find the difference between it and 360, and you will get your answer. But I think this is important because you don't necessarily have to remember the rules if you understand the reference angles, that a reference angle is an acute angle made with the x-axis. Sine doesn't have any quick answers, so you've got to really understand those reference angles. All right, email me or come see me in a live Q&A if you have any questions. Thank you so much, and y'all have a great day.